When it comes to running faster and being an explosive athlete, I was not dealt the right cards with my genetics. My entire family was overweight, including myself at a young age, and all I cared about was playing video games. But after I started watching Sonic for 3 years on the TV, all I wanted to do was become an explosive athlete with zero limits. I tried everything for years to run faster, lose weight, and do whatever it takes to become an explosive athlete, but there was always one thing holding me back, and it was speed and power. Well, everything changed when I started implementing these key exercises, and I have now trained over 10 athletes to run sub 11 in the 100 meter, and 1,300 athletes finally sprint faster. So in this video, I'm going to share with you the best plyometrics to improve your speed and power, and how to program them correctly so you can help me achieve my goal of helping 10,000 athletes run 4.7 in the 40-yard, which is the average NFL 40-yard time. Before I show you these exercises, you need to check out this checklist right here. It's going to give you the fundamentals of how to train to become an explosive athlete. If you don't have these fundamentals, no exercise in the world will help you improve. So number 1, every drill must have intent. Number 2, every drill needs to have high rest in between every single set. Number 3, plyometrics and strength training needs to be between 1 to 6 reps. Number 4, if your goal is power, every lift should be between 40 to 70%, and your goal should be to improve your power 1 rep max, not your absolute 1 rep max. Number 5, when doing resisted plyometrics, you should go between 10 to 40%, 30 to 40% for acceleration, and if you're trying to improve max velocity, that's gonna be 10 to 20%. Number 6, your mind must be clear during every plyometric exercise and lift you do. You should never be consciously thinking about your technique. That is for the reflection portion. And number 7, you must track every single yard you sprint, every inch you jump, every exercise you do should have some type of variable that you can improve on every single workout. Something simple called progressive overload. For athletes with the goal to become more powerful and faster, the first step is literally the first step. But what if I told you that you could improve peak power without having to do an insane amount of volume of sprinting every day? If you're an intermediate to beginner athlete, most sprinters will only hit peak power around 10 to 20 yards of the sprinting. This means most of the time when you're sprinting, you're not even training power, even if you're training with max intent. Then we all know that peak power is the most important thing for sprinting faster, but if you can only get it for about a small threshold of 10 to 20 yards, then how are you supposed to train it? For most athletes, this is going to take a long period of time. It's going to take years just to slowly increase that peak threshold, especially if you have below average genetics like most of us. So this is why people go 5 to 10 years of training and they feel like nothing's improving, is because they need peak power to improve. They need to raise the peak power output, but the only way you can do that is by doing sprint training over and over and over again, unless you do this one thing right here. Instead of wasting your time, you're going to do this drill right here to teach your body how to produce horizontal power over a longer period of time. I'm going to call this drill standing quintuple jump. The quintuple means 5 jumps in total. The first step of the drill is you're going to start off at one line every single time, find that line, mark it down with a shoe, and then you're going to get ready for a broad jump position. Now that you're standing in this position like you're going to do a broad jump, you're going to drive your arms above your head, drive them, snap them down behind your body, and then jump as far as possible for 1 max broad jump. Now, instead of landing on 2 feet for this broad jump, you're going to land on 1 leg. Absorb that force on that 1 leg and then bound forward and try to cover as much distance as possible to the next leg. Now we're doing something that looks like a normal bound. The next step is to bound each step until you hit 5 bounds in total. That first broad jump does not count as a bound. That is just your setup jump. And then you have 5 bounds to cover as much distance as humanly possible. Once you cover this distance, grab your shoe and mark that distance, rest for the recommended sets and reps I put above, and then you're going to repeat this and try to beat that score next time. So let's say you get 10 feet for your first standing quintuple jump, your goal is to hit 10.25 feet for the next one. This is going to be your progressive overload. I would not add more sets and reps constantly. I would just try to beat your score next time. That will be progressive overload through intensity. And quick tip, I would preferably do this before you lift. I wouldn't do this after a deep squat as some contrast method. This would be earlier in your workout, either right before your sprints or right after your sprints, something to potentiate your sprints or to improve that explosive power after your sprint training. I used to struggle with early acceleration, but something I never struggled with was late acceleration. Early acceleration is going to be between 5 to 15 yards of your first sprint, and then 15 to 25 yards, you're still accelerating, and that is called late acceleration. This is where your feet is going to have higher turnover, where you're kind of bicycling through your feet, and this is where you're going to start building up that momentum after the force you generated in the first 15 yards. If you produce enough explosive power to get those first 5 yards down, but you feel like you can't build up momentum, you're eventually going to get hogged down if you can't build that momentum between 5 to 25 yards. And to develop this phase of your late acceleration, we're gonna do a drill called high hurdle hops. These are not like the regular hurdle hops where you're just doing a shoe. We actually want to try to see if we can get a tall hurdle. If not, you could do this with a shoe or a short hurdle. I'll just tell you the different recommendations for that at the end of this demonstration. The first step is to grab 4 high hurdles or even 3, and then you're going to separate the distance between 3 to 4 steps, whatever feels most comfortable for you. Everyone's different. Some are 2, some are 5. It's all up to you, but usually about 3 to 4 feet. Just put your feet right in front of each other and count that out, and that'll be a good enough distance between every hurdle. And then your goal is to jump over the hurdle as high as possible. Bounce off. You don't want to pause. You want to keep springing and treat the floor like a trampoline and bounce right back off until you finish the 4 reps. And then if it says 4 sets of 2, then you're going to be doing that as the 4 hurdles as 1 full rep, and then the next 4 hurdles as another rep. That will be your first set. If you don't have high hurdles, you could do short hurdles or a shoe and do the same thing but on 1 leg. If this might be too advanced for you, you could also do this on 2 feet, but 1 leg is gonna be a little more muscle dominant, which is great for acceleration qualities. And you can just bounce off those small hurdles and treat the floor like it's lava and keep springing off for the recommended reps and sets. And if you have no equipment, then just try to imagine like there's a shoe in front of you, which you should have some shoes, but imagine there's a shoe in front of you and you're trying to bounce and time it so you don't actually knock over the hurdle or knock over the shoe, and then try to spring up as high as possible with as much force as possible. The reps and sets I'm going to give you is probably gonna be about 3 to 4 sets of 2. 2 means you go through a full 4, that's 1 rep, and then another full 4 of shoes or hurdles, that's another rep. Now we finally need to round off everything with a balanced way to develop explosive power in early acceleration and late acceleration. And I'm just gonna tell you, it's def jumps. Step 1, you're going to find a 12 to 36 inch box. Go based off your vertical jump. So you have a 20-inch standing vertical jump, you jump off a 20-inch vertical jump. If you have a 30-inch vertical jump, then you go off a 30-inch box and you drop off. Step 2 is you're going to drop off and absorb the force. Once you're used to that and you don't get any knee pain or joint pain, then step 3 is you're going to drop off and reverse out the box. If that feels normal, then we're gonna go into a full-fledged def jump where you do step 4. This is where you drop off the box. You're going to jump as high as possible, but you're gonna let your knees sink in. So you're gonna actually drop down to a quarter squat or half squat position and then try to produce as much force as possible, as fast as possible into the ground and jump up as high as possible. A drop jump is when you bounce off the ground. This is more for your max velocity and your 1-foot jumps, but for 2-foot jumps and acceleration power development, you want to get into these deep knee angles and try to produce as much power as possible. This is going to be probably the best exercise for developing power. And here are the reps and sets, usually about 3 to 4 sets of 2 to 4 reps. And here is a sample program from the Speed Academy. Speed Academy is my 12-month sprint transformation program. All the exercises are gonna be put into a sample workout, maybe with some sprint training. You can just get it for free or go into the link below and actually hop on the Speed Academy. Hop on the Speed Academy is probably one of the best ways to transform your sprint speed without having to do any of the guesswork. But none of these drills matter if you do not have the proper technique so you can produce force at the right angles to become an explosive athlete. So make sure you watch this video right here where I teach you the easiest way to sprint faster with correct technique.